Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the AM Report for HAPS News, the network of now. It is Friday, November 20th, and my God, will 2020 just end? I'm Alex Majer. I am so pleased to be with you guys this morning on this Friday. In just a minute, I'll be joined by Miranda Yaver. She's a political scientist and postdoctoral scholar, a constitutional expert. We'll be here to discuss the insane Rudy Giuliani press conference yesterday and Donald Trump's attempts to circumvent democracy, where we're at with these election results and where we're headed. And I'm very pleased she'll be joining us. All of this and more on the AM Report. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the AM Report. I'm Alex Majer. Thanks for joining. If you're watching on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Periscope, YouTube, please leave us a comment live on there. We'll bat around with you. Let us know what you think. Or if you're watching on the HAPS platform or app, click the award button. Let us know you're enjoying it. It'll show up, and we greatly appreciate it. I'll be joined in just a moment by Miranda Yaver. She's a postdoctoral scholar at UCLA, constitutional expert and political scientist, to discuss just the nuttiness of 2020 and how this election outcome has been unfolding, and Donald Trump's legal woes, both currently and when he leaves office, because he will leave office. But first, this morning's headlines, and we've got a few headlines to cover. Judges in federal and state courts in Georgia, Arizona, and Pennsylvania threw out election-related lawsuits yesterday brought by Republicans in the Trump campaign. So his total losses right now in court, federal and state court, is now 31. He's lost 31 cases. He's won 2 of them, both of them related to Pennsylvania's late arriving mail-in ballots. Neither of those 2 will affect the outcome of the election. We'll talk to Miranda about that in just a minute. Michigan's GOP House Speaker and the majority leader in the Senate in Michigan are both headed to the White House today at Trump's request to have a personal meeting with him. And Reuters is reporting that the Trump campaign's new strategy here is to persuade legislators to intervene in the election outcome and to take the power of appointing electors away from the governors and secretaries of state and move them to the state legislatures that are Trump friendly in swing states. We'll talk about whether that's possible in a moment as well. Just laying the scene for you. Georgia has completed its hand recount of ballots cast in the presidential election. They've confirmed yesterday that Biden won with just over 12,000 votes and that there was no widespread voter fraud. So Georgia has flipped blue. No, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The president-elect, Joe Biden, said yesterday, that he would not impose a national lockdown. Instead, he's calling on region-specific approaches and has been meeting with various governors to discuss a mask mandate in the states. So he's saying a one-size-fits-all approach is not the approach to take, and not going to implement a national lockdown. I'll note that cases are becoming much more severe in the United States very exponentially. So we're heading into a very difficult winter. So please wear a mask, and we know that a mask will we know that masks work, so please wear them. A vaccine is on the horizon. So I'd like to welcome a friend of the show. She's on almost every Friday. I think last week we missed each other, which was my fault, but I'm really glad she's here this week. Please welcome to the program, Miranda Yaver. Good morning, Miranda.
Good morning, Alex. How are you doing?
Oh, 2020, social distancing and existential dread. How about you?
About the same. The timeline keeps getting dumber, and I'm just ready for 2020 to be over.
My favorite tweet that you tweet, and you've tweeted with alarming frequency, is what a stupid time to be alive. And it's always in response to something really just stupid. And I get up every morning and I try to report the news, and this Giuliani presser yesterday just took the cake on just stupid. But favorite tweet that you tweet, and very, very true. So Miranda, the Trump campaign has been in court since we learned that Joe Biden is the president-elect, and filing lawsuit after lawsuit alleging widespread voter fraud and trying to drum up conspiracy theories about the voting machines. His attorney, Sidney Powell, one of his attorneys, Sidney Powell, yesterday claiming that 7 million votes were flipped in machines over from Donald Trump to Joe Biden, things that are totally baseless. They keep using the name Dominion, the Dominion server, and a lot of it is so difficult to even pull together in a coherent thread that it's hard to follow exactly what they're alleging. Although in courts, I'm sure you've been following and reading these transcripts, they're not alleging voter fraud. What's your take on what we're seeing with these legal challenges from the Trump campaign right now?
So first of all, I just want to remind people that widespread voter fraud is not something that is a thing. So systematic analysis found that only 35 verifiable cases of voter fraud out of 1 billion votes cast. So I feel like whenever we talk about voter fraud, it's just important to remind people we have done large widespread analysis of this, and there are only just a small handful of cases, and so the notion that there are millions of fraudulent votes is just inconsistent with any semblance of reality. And what was interesting was on Tucker Carlson last night, which I don't watch, but I saw some tweets about it. He had said that he had invited Sidney Powell onto his show and asked her to provide the evidence, and just she didn't do that. And I'm thinking, well, when you failed Tucker Carlson's evidentiary standard, that said something about how much you've got to back up your theories of voter fraud. It's also, it's this very strange theory that Democrats would somehow rig the election to get the Electoral College and the popular vote, but not the Senate, and to lose a few House seats. It's just this very strange theory that's really not a legal one in any sense, but rather a political one. It's a media strategy to delegitimize the election and make it harder for Joe Biden as the president to be able to command the support of the voters, and sort of the understand the legitimacy in the eyes of the voters.
Amen. And we have a lot of chimers. We have a lot of commenters chiming in this morning. Carmen Adams, hello from San Diego. Daniel Goff is commenting on Rudy's very bad hair day. And of course, that press conference was embarrassing because there were like streams of what appeared to be black hair dye streaming down Rudy Giuliani's just atrocious face. And
imagine if that had happened to a woman. I mean, we would never hear the end of it.
Well, we're not going to hear the end of it, in fairness. It was pretty embarrassing. One of the commenters is saying, we are so sick of hearing about Trump. Can't we finally ignore this MF right now? Why are we still talking about him, says another commenter. And, because he's still president, and because his administration will not sign off on a transfer of power, which is something his General Services Administrator by the name of Emily Murphy. She's a political appointee. She's a Trump appointee. She has refused to sign off on the transition as per standard protocol, which is once you learn who the projected winner is going to be, you sign off on the transition, because it's a massive undertaking to transition the government over from one administration to the next, and they need a lot of intel briefings and to prepare cabinet posts and many offices that they need to fill. And Biden is saying publicly that he cannot. He will be inhibited by this lack of a transition with regards to the coronavirus. That it will inhibit it will delay the distribution of the vaccine. Miranda, what are your thoughts on this Emily Murphy character and the impacts and ramifications of this failure to get this transition going?
Yeah, so a peaceful transfer of power is essential to a healthy democracy, and it says something about this administration that we aren't having that. It says that this administration does not really care about American democracy. They care about winning at all costs, and for him to win, it really just means to cripple the next administration, not to sustain its core institutions. And the GSA is certainly a part of that. So, it's very dangerous, both in terms of what it means for the stability of our institutions and just the immediate issues, which is that, he's not getting the same intelligence briefings and pandemic preparedness that he would otherwise. So it's very dangerous, and it's hard. I feel like I'm always sort of saying the same thing about this, but it's really hard to overstate how problematic it is to be crippling the next administration, both in terms of election legitimacy and in terms of the practical preparedness.
Amen. And, Miranda, when I was sifting through video of this just truly stupid press conference, I mean, there's no more artful way to describe this press conference with Rudy Giuliani yesterday. It was hard to pick one video clip because it was so. I was thinking I was thinking from the perspective of a journalist who's trying to convey the information, like what is the theme of what he is saying? What's the core of what he's saying that I can provide the viewers so that they have some ability to digest their argument, what their argument is, assuming that their argument is at all in good faith. And this is what I was able to come up with. Let's hear from Rudy Giuliani in his press conference about widespread voter fraud. I'll note Rudy Giuliani has stepped in for attorneys who are basically backing out in courts across the country because their cases don't have any merit, and they're trying to protect probably their professional reputations and jobs. So they're pulling out of these lawsuits. They're meritless. Rudy Giuliani stepped in. He holds a press conference yesterday about election fraud, and I'm going to play you just a few minutes of what he said.
Did you all watch My Cousin Vinny? You know the movie? It's one of my favorite law movies because he comes from Brooklyn. And when the nice lady who said she saw, and then he says to her, how many fingers do I got up? And she says, 3. Well, she was too far away to see it was only 2. These people were further away than my cousin Vinny was from the witness. With the specifics. Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, the margin of victory now for Biden, which is not a victory, it's a fraud, is 69,140 votes. The reality is that we are now at a count of 682,770 ballots, for which we have affidavits that there was no inspection of that ballot at the time that it was entered in the vote. It was a mail ballot. Mail ballots are particularly prone to fraud. We were warned about that by Jimmy Carter, President Jimmy Carter, and Secretary Baker in a report about a dozen years ago, in which they said that mail balloting is particularly susceptible of fraud, that we should very carefully consider ever doing it, and that it can be taken advantage of. Justice Souter warned us of the same thing in a comment in an election law case. And even the New York Times wrote articles about how dangerous mail-in voting was. And
grumble, 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 number, vague number, mail-in ballots are fraud. My hair dye's running down my face. Rudy Giuliani, America's mayor. I mean, what a disgrace. What a disgraceful way to end your career. It's actually, what is going on with, Miranda, let me just ask you, what's going on here with Rudy Giuliani?
As a New Yorker, I really hope that who moved there under Bloomberg, I really hope that he wasn't this nutty when New Yorkers voted for him. But yeah, I mean, one thing that's important to note is that vote by mail is not associated with high rates of fraud. Oregon is a vote by mail state, and Oregon is not rife with voter fraud. So the fact of the matter is that he is lying about the prevalence of voter fraud in general and specific to mail-in voting. And he has been willing to risk his legal reputation to defend President Trump. One thing that was also quite striking was that in a hearing a couple of days ago, before this press conference, he was in a hearing with a judge who basically had to explain basic constitutional law to Rudy because he didn't understand things like levels of judicial scrutiny. Which is something that I teach to my undergraduate constitutional law students on the first or second week. And he said, well, I guess I don't understand strict scrutiny. And I'm just thinking all of my undergraduates could explain it with pretty good accuracy. So it's very sad to see that someone who graduated cum laude from NYU NYU law could really undermine his own legal reputation, or has just sort of gone off the deep end in sincerity. But toward this end of delegitimizing the election, it's very disgraceful.
Some comments rolling in. Let's see. Shivani, hearing he's going to start a Fox News revival channel. We'll see him again. Yeah, what more can a poor boy do, says Provisia. What more can a poor boy do? He aligned with a loser. I think that there's some good evidence that Rudy Giuliani is motivated solely out of an animus towards Joe Biden. And people forget, and I did a little digging and found a video clip for everybody that might provide some historical context to this. People forget that in 2008, when Joe Biden ran for president, Rudy Giuliani was also running for president. This is a 2007 campaign. And Joe Biden is sort of well known to have sort of ended Rudy Giuliani's presidential campaign in a moment during the Democratic debates that happened back then. And here is the exact moment that Joe Biden sort of put an end to Giuliani's future political and presidential aspirations. Here it is.
And the irony is Rudy Giuliani, probably the most underqualified man since George Bush to seek the presidency, is here talking about any of the people here. Rudy Giuliani. I mean, think about it. Rudy Giuliani, there's only three things he mentioned in a sentence, a noun and a verb and 9/11. I mean, there's nothing else. There's nothing else. And I mean it sincerely. He is genuinely not qualified to be president.
Oh, I mean, 9/11, it never gets old.
It never gets old. I kind of forgot about this, but I do now remember it. And I do kind of remember there being a lot of speculation that he was really humiliated by this moment and to be laughed at. And much like Trump, and these are like little egomaniacs who don't like being laughed at or to think that they're a loser. And I think much like Trump, doesn't like to be humiliated. Trump is this is sort of a story, a fable, but people have speculated that his motivation to run was when Obama embarrassed him during the White House Correspondents' Dinner during a monologue before he ran for president. That single moment was one of the motivating factors for him to run, as well as to create a publicity campaign for himself to make some more money. He never intended.
The theme of this seems to be a lot of fragile egos.
fragile male egos. My kind, I'm embarrassed for you. Stop. Pull it together. Sometimes we lose. Show some dignity, for God's sake. Anyway, let's talk about the potential pardons. And commenters already, very loyal commenter and viewer Daniel Goff. Pence pardons Trump. Trump forms Trump TV channel. Henchman support. There's a lot of talk about pardons, Miranda, and whether Donald Trump will pardon himself. Try to. We know it's not legal. Or whether he'll invoke the 25th Amendment to write an hour before the inauguration, have Pence pardon him, and then leave to go run away to the Kremlin or something. What exactly is the strategy here with regards to pardons?
Yeah, so I don't think, it's technically never been tried before, but the president really can't pardon himself because that would mean that the president is the judge of his own case, and that's not how our legal system works. That said, there are a lot of things going on right now that are not really how our legal system works, and I'm trying not to second guess anything that President Trump would attempt in order to help himself at this moment, because he's really the tactics that in which he's engaged, especially with Michigan, have been very coup-like. So President, but if Vice President Pence were to become president before Biden takes office, he could pardon the president. One of the reasons why the pardon was so important to President Trump is that once he leaves office, he becomes liable in a way that he isn't as president. The Supreme Court has said has asserted that we want to help the president to avoid personal liability because he's got a lot of things to do as president, and the nation counts on his ability to focus on that. I'm sure the Supreme Court wasn't thinking about a president who spends all of his time golfing and tweeting, and watching cable news, but that is sort of the general sense of that the court has laid out. But once he's no longer president, he does become liable, and so it would certainly be valuable to him to get pardoned. But there's also this. It's certainly unclear whether he would be able to secure such a pardon unless Pence were to ascend to the presidency before January 20th.
Yeah, and a little historical context. When Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon and became president, a lot of people sort of attribute Gerald Ford's pardon of Richard Nixon as being one of the reasons why he didn't win re-election and why Jimmy Carter ended up winning the subsequent election. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of national outrage. I don't know if the socio-political environment is the same as it was in the 70s, but
it's definitely more polarized now.
It's definitely more polarized for sure. And I think definitely more likely that Donald Trump is guilty of much more severe crimes. I mean, that's just speculation, but we do know that there are still cases going before the state and federal courts, investigations into his tax returns, into potential fraud. There's this defamation suit by author E. Jean Carroll, who has accused him of rape. And those suits are proceeding right now. And there's the Manhattan District Attorney. A federal pardon by the president, whomever that president might be, whether it's Pence or otherwise, wouldn't absolve Donald Trump of his crimes in state courts or lower. So are we going to see an indictment of Donald Trump when he leaves office?
I would be lying if I said that I had a good sense about that. I certainly hope so, because it does seem like, there's been a lot of criminal activity, certainly with respect to his goings on in New York, as opposed to in the federal crimes. So yes, that was an important distinction, that a pardon would absolve him with respect to federal crimes at the state courts. I think that there's going to be a lot of people who will be working to ensure that he's held accountable for his wrongdoing. But right now, if 2020 has taught me anything, it's that predictions are difficult.
Yeah, and with this guy, it's just so hard to say. And I think a lot of people have, because of Bill Barr and who's at the top of the Justice Department, it's hard to feel faith that the justice system really works for people right now. And I think maybe one of the things that we're holding on to hope with a new Biden administration is that we'll have a Justice Department and a system of justice that is for the people again, and not just to protect the president and his cronies. We got a lot of comments about this. Please let me get to see a comeuppance, says Pravija Mafu. Sorry, I can't say your name properly, but please let me see some comeuppance, one of my favorite words. So, that would be nice. It would send a message, they say. Shivani asks, how is this not a conflict? His own vice president can pardon him. The thing is if Vice President Pence were to temporarily be president, which is totally possible, all they got to do is have Trump resign an hour before the inauguration. And because Biden's not president and Trump is no longer president, Vice President Pence will become president. And in that hour of time or 30 minutes of time, will have the power to do whatever the president usually does. He'll be fully vested as president of the United States, even privately, even if it's behind closed doors. It doesn't need to be a public media event. So this is something that can certainly and easily happen. Is it a conflict? Absolutely, but it's one of the loopholes in our constitutional system and processes that that this president continues to stretch and expose.
And
so
we saw that with Nixon and Ford, and Ford was his VP, and he was able to pardon Nixon. It cost him politically, but it can happen.
Yeah, and the line when Ford did it was to unify the country and to put our long national nightmare to rest or whatnot. And I don't think it did that. I think people needed answers, and I think people need answers now too. And a lot of people do. It's not just the people that are trying to allege voter fraud in an election where voter fraud didn't happen. So, Miranda, love having you on.
So much fun.
Thank you for joining the AM Report this morning. Where can people find you and bat around with you?
I'm on Twitter at Miranda Yaver. Reach out. I'd love to hear from you.
All right. This has been Miranda Yaver, political scientist, constitutional scholar. Thank you so much for joining the program, Miranda.
Thanks so much for having me.
We'll see you next week. This has been the AM Report for HAPS News, the network of Now. We are live every weekday morning at 7:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Eastern, with all of your quick political news and headlines to get your day started right. If you like this journalism, please consider sponsoring it. You can buy me a cup of coffee by visiting haps.tv/@Alex and subscribe to the program, or just tune in on social media every week. And I'd love to see you. We'll be back Monday morning, and have a fantastic weekend, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thanks. Bye.